Hello everyone, I'm Jeremy. Today is day 93 of reading. Today we're reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Let's get started. We're on page 184. Professor Flitwick this morning. That's why we decided we better get going. The sooner we get a confession out of Malfoy, the better, snarled Ron. Do you know what I think? He was in such a foul temper after the Quidditch match, he took it out on Colin. There's something else, said Harry, watching Hermione tearing bundles of knotgrass and throwing them into the potion. Dobby came to visit me in the middle of the night. Ron and Hermione looked up, amazed. Harry told them everything Dobby had told him, or hadn't told him. Hermione and Ron listened with their mouths open. The Chamber of Secrets had been opened before? Hermione said. This settles it, said Ron in a triumphant voice. Lucius Malfoy must have opened the chamber when he was at school here, and now he's told dear old Draco how to do it. It's obvious. Wish Dobby told you what kind of monster's in there, though. I want to know how come nobody's noticed it sneaking around the snow. Maybe it can make itself invisible, said Hermione, prodding just to the bottom of the cauldron. Or maybe it can disguise itself, pretend to be a suit of armor or something. I've heard about chameleon ghosts. You read too much, Hermione, said Ron, pouring dead wings on top of the leeches. He crumpled up the empty lace-sling bag and looked at Harry. So Dobby stopped us from getting on the train and broke your arm? He shook his head. You know what, Harry? If he doesn't stop trying to save your life, he's going to kill you. The news that Colin Creevey had been attacked and was now lying as though dead in the hospital wing had spread throughout the school by Monday morning. The air was suddenly thick with rumor and suspicion. The first years were now moving around the castle in tight-knit groups, as if scared they would be attacked if they ventured forth alone. Ginny Weasley, who sat next to Colin Creevey and Charles, was distraught, but Harry felt that her and George were going wrong about cheering her up. They were taking turns covering themselves with fur or boils and jumping out at her from behind the statues. They only stopped when Percy, apoplectic with rage, told them that he was going to write to Mrs. Weasley and tell her Ginny was having nightmares. Meanwhile, hidden from the teachers, a roaring trade in talismans, amulets, and other protective devices were sweeping the school. Device hung bottom by a large, evil-smelling green onion, a pointed purple crystal, and a rotting newt tail before the other Gryffindor's boys pointed out that he was in no danger. He was a pureblood, and therefore unlikely to be attacked. They went to Filch first, Neville said, his round face fearful, and every note almost a squib. In the second week of December, Professor McGonagall came around as usual, collecting the names of those who would be staying at school for the Christmas. Harry, Ron, and Hermione signed her list. They heard that Malfoy was staying, which struck them as very suspicious. The holidays would be the perfect time to use Polyjuice Potion and try to worm a confession out of him. Unfortunately, Potion was only half finished. They still needed the bicorn horn and the boomslang skin, and the only place they were going to get them was from Snape's private stores. Harry privately felt he'd rather face Slytherin's legendary monster than let Snape catch him robbing his office. What we need, said Hermione briskly, as Thursday afternoon's double potions lessons loomed near, is a diversion. Now one of us can sneak into Snape's office and take what we need. Harry and Ron looked at her nervously. I think I'd better do the actual stealing, Hermione continued in a matter-of-fact tone. You two will be expelled if you get into any more trouble. I've got a clean record, so all you need to do is cause enough mayhem to keep Snape busy for 5 minutes or so. Harry smiled feebly. Deliberately causing mayhem in Snape's potions class was about as safe as poking a sleeping dragon in the eye. Potions lessons took place in one of the large dungeons. Thursday's afternoon's lessons proceeded in the usual way. 20 cauldrons stood steaming between the wooden desks, which stood brass scales and jars of ingredients. Snape prowled through the fumes, making waspish remarks about Gryffindor's work, while the Slytherin sniggered appreciatively. Draco Malfoy, who was Snape's favorite student, kept flicking pufferfish eyes at Ron and Harry, who knew that that if they retaliated, they would get to fetch him faster than you could say, "I'm fair." Harry's swelling solution was far too runny, but he had his mind on more important things. He was waiting for Hermione's signal, and he hardly listened as Snape passed his sneer as a watery potion. When Snape turned and walked off to bully Neville, Hermione caught Harry's head and nodded. Harry ducked swiftly down behind his cauldron, pulled one of Fred's filibuster fireworks out of his pocket, and gave it a quick prod with his wand. The firework began to fizz and sputter. Knowing he had only seconds, Harry straightened up, took aim, and lobbed it into the air. It landed right on target in Gorio's cauldron. Ghost potion exploded, showering the whole class. People shrieked as splashes of swelling solution hit them. Malfoy got a face full, and his nose began to swell like a balloon. Will blundered around. He sat over his eyes, which had expanded to the size of a dinner plate. Snape was trying to restore calm and find out what happened. Through the confusion, Harry saw Hermione slip quietly into Snape's office. "Silence! Silence!" Snape roared. "Anyone who has been slapped, come here for a deflating draft. When I find out who did this..." Harry tried not to laugh as he watched Malfoy hurry forward, his head drooping with the weight of a nose like a small melon. As half of the class lumbered up to Snape's desks, some weighted down, with arms like clubs. Others, unable to talk with gigantic puffed-up lips. Harry saw Hermione slide back into the dungeon, the front of her robes bulging. When everyone had taken a swig of the antidote and various swellings had subsided, Snape went over to Goyle's cauldron and scooped out the twisted black remains of the firework. There was a sudden hush. "If I ever find out who threw this," Snape whispered, "I shall make sure that person is expelled." Harry arranged his face in what he hoped was a puzzled expression. Snape was looking right at him, and the bell that rang 10 minutes later could not have been more welcome. "He knew it was me," Harry told Ron and Hermione as they hurried back to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. "I could tell." Hermione threw the new ingredients into the cauldron and began to stir feverishly. "It'll be ready in 2 weeks," she said happily. "Snape can't prove it was you," said Ron reassuringly to Harry. "What can he do?" "Knowing Snape, something foul," said Harry, as the potion frothed and bubbled. A week later, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were walking across the entrance hall when they saw a small knot of people gathered around the notice board, reading a piece of parchment that had just been pinned up. Seamus Finnegan and Dean Thomas beckoned them over, looking excited. "They're starting a dueling club," said Seamus. "First meeting tonight. I wouldn't mind dueling lessons. They might come in handy one of these days." "What, you reckon Slytherin monster can duel?" said Ron. But he, too, read the sign with interest. "Could be useful," he said to Harry and Hermione as they went into dinner. "Shall we go?" Harry and Hermione were all for it. So at 8 o'clock that evening, they hurried back to the great hall. The long dining tables had vanished, and a golden stage had appeared along one wall, lit by thousands of candles floating overhead. The ceiling was velvety black once more, and most of the school seemed to be packed beneath it, all carrying their wands and looking excited. "I'm wondering who will be teaching us," said Hermione as they edged into the chattering crowd. "Someone told me Flitwick was a dueling champion when he's young. Maybe it'll be him." "As long as it's not," Harry began, but he ended on a groan. Gilderoy Lockhart was walking onto the stage, resplendent in robes of deep plum and accompanied by none other than Snape, wearing his usual black. Lockhart waved an arm for silence and called, "Gather round, gather round. Can everyone see me? Can you all hear me? Excellent. Now, Professor Dumbledore has granted me permission to start this little dueling club to train you all in case you ever need to defend yourselves, as I myself have done on countless occasions. For full details, see my published works." Let me introduce my assistant, Professor Snape.